Hello, hello. This is Adrienne, Capricorntigress, and let me do my official opening here. I am Adrienneobey, an astrologer, tarot reader, spiritual coach, and sacred soul light healer. I am a co-author of the upcoming book, The Soul Legacy Journal, Spiritual Awakening Stories of 365, and a soul-guided instructor at Spiritual Business Network, Women Network. I'm a Western intuitive astrologer with more than 40 years experience. And over the next hour, half an hour, let's try to keep it to 20 minutes, okay? I'm gonna share my learned insights on astrology. And today, the conversation is astrology. Is it real? So we're gonna be talking about the validity of astrology. Is it real? It's one of the biggest questions I've seen when I was looking at what are the most common questions people have about astrology. The most common question is it real? So I, being the person I am, pulled out some of my more ancient books. Some of these books are 30 and 40 years old, I kid you not. And I start looking at what they had found, the greats, on astrology and the validity of astrology and how it interacts in our lives and the role it plays in our lives and how it manifests in reality and how we can interact or use this astrology tool, because I think it's a tool, to enhance our life. So that's what we're going to go over today. I'm really proud to be here to share this with you. So this first message I want to share is this. It says, the beauty of astrology is that it can accurately describe psychological dynamics or qualities in effect at any given time. For instance, at one's birth and in any given situation. For example, one's life. If one knows the basic principles of the planets, signs, and houses, then the rest of astrology is simply a matter of art. Applying the manifold possibility of combinations involving these principles into meaningful expression. And that was taken from Raymond A. Merriman and from the book Spiritual Astrology from Jan Spiller. One of my favorite books, that's Spiritual Astrology. Another passage, because I've got several here, because there's more than enough information to go around. I mean, let's stop and think about this for a second. I've talked about this on numerous occasions, but astrology is, if not, I would say probably the most ancient science. The first people, they were bicameral by nature, and they worshiped the sun, Ra, God of the, God, sun, God. And then there was Isis and all of those different things. So, this goes back much further than even Christianity. I really want people to get a grasp of that, because when they go around going, oh, it's not real, I'm going, huh? Because look, there was one, I tell you, wait a minute, let me find the one where I found that. It was amazing when I found it, because I thought, what? There is a specific time frame when astrology, and I think this is here it is. So there was a specific time frame when astrology became more commonplace in modern times. We're talking in since the Aquarian age. And so we're dealing with that. So I can't say that every person who claims to be an astrologer is a good astrologer, or if they're a learned astrologer, or if they're a real astrologer, if they know what they're talking about. But the basis of astrology is and has always been. And that's because the planets are here and they have always been. And we're dealing with that. So here's another book, one of my favorite books, called Write Your Own Horoscope by Joseph Goodavich. This is one of those ancient books. I think this book was from 1968, okay? But this is what it says here. It's a wonderful idea, replied George Bernard Shaw to someone who asked his opinion of Christianity. It's too bad nobody had ever tried it. If you substitute the scientific method for Christianity and apply it to astrology, it creates a rather interesting problem. The scientific method doesn't always work. For example, there's now considerable evidence proving that humans are influenced by the cosmic environment. Science won't buy it, however, because it violates established laws. Assuming that astrology is a false doctrine and doesn't work, science could render a great service to mankind by discrediting it once and for all. And it is now 2021. This book is from 1968. They have still not discredited astrology. Okay, so I just thought I'd say that. But it is the exact opposite seems to be happening, right? It's as if we learn more about interplanetary space, it appears that the planets have a more complex influence in human affairs than anyone had ever thought possible. The omnipowerful solar field itself is affected in various ways by the orbiting planets, and in all life on Earth is directly affected by changes in solar radiation, invisible, unfelt at lines of cosmic energy from the equatorial region of our local star, often in predictable patterns. What they're saying is the cosmic movements are measured and they're always 100% consistently on point. Like I, as an astrologer, have been at this for 40 years. I can't begin to tell you how often I can predict what's going to happen because it is an immutable situation. It's science. So these planets are still in their same spots. And even though they might make the rotations, we can measure the rotations. We know exactly how many years, say, Neptune's going to take, how many years Uranus is going to take, where the moon's going to be. Like, I know we've got a full moon lunar eclipse in the sign of Sagittarius at 5 degrees and 25 minutes happening in 2.5 days. That's how specific it is. Okay, I just thought I'd throw that out there. So considered in this light, the discovery of astrology must have been a gargantuan intellectual achievement. But as science writer Isaac Asimov put it, there is no belief, however foolish, that will not gather its faithful adherents who will defend it to its death. So, you know, there's still, there are people who are not sure because it's, you know, what happened? Okay, so here's where I think all the issues came in. First of all, there was Christianity, right? So people like me, astrologers, I don't even need to go back to the witch hunt days, do I, women? What they did to people who followed the stars and the you know, the sun and the moon and did the natural thing. Many women were killed because of it, because of the knowledge that they had, how they could predict things. They could predict births, deaths, marriages, famine. So before the 1960s, because there was this, you know, purge, right? They purged us. A lot of women talk about the witch's wound because I believe I was in a past life, but I believe astrology or the knowledge of the moon and the sun and how we're all one under it was, people were murdered for that. And so it went away. But in the 1960s, you couldn't find 10 popular works in 1960, right? You couldn't find 10 popular works on astrology in any bookstore or library. The best available were the scholarly types. They lack mass appeal. And since astrology has traditionally been called an Aquarian science, it seemed more than just coincidence that it didn't capture a mass audience until 1962. So when I found this out, I thought I had to share this. There was an event, there was something that happened in 1962, because most of us grew up hearing about astrology, reading it, maybe seeing it in a newspaper, in a magazine or something, right? So it's commonplace to us. But this was not until about 1962. And the reason is that on February 4th and 5th of that year, there was an astrologically significant alignment of all 5 inner planets: Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, with the sun and moon in total eclipse in Aquarius. This happened in the middle of a 36-year Aquarian cycle, not age, which began in 1945 and ended in 1981. And that's where that's when the resurgence came. Years before the event of this great Aquarian stellium and eclipse, astrologers had been predicting incredible scientific discoveries, technological achievements, vast breakthroughs, and human consciousness, and last but not least, the ultimate acceptance of astrology. By and large, the predictions of most skilled astrologers in those days proved to be remarkably accurate. There's one lady, I'm trying to remember her name. I used to know it offhand, but we're both born January 5th, and Jean Dixon. She made the most amazing predictions. I mean, world leaders turned to Jean Dixon because she was so accurate. And she was in the early, 1900s. So, but there's been vast breakthroughs in human consciousness. And last but not least, the ultimate was astrology. By and large, the predictions of most skilled astrologers in those days were remarkably accurate. And, in one respect, mass appeal seemed to be detrimental, but the exploiters of astrology went ape. So you can now find almost an endless supply of pop astrology books, annual sun sign readings, zodiacal gimmicks, astrological talismans, computerized horoscopes, and a parade of weird and occult material only loosely linked to astrology. The devil worship to group sex. Astonishingly, all of this is attributed to the so-called age of Aquarius, which, because of something called the precession of the equinoxes, won't happen until the year 2481. So anyway, because the stock market hinges on mass human emotion, any system of able to anticipate forces that influence the way large number of people will think, feel, and act is bound to be successful. And really, I think after the stock market, it's when it really began to take off, because astrology is that accurate. I mean, yeah. The most convincing evidence of cosmic influence in human affairs is a system called space-time forecasting, STF. It predicts national and world economic conditions. But by combining astrology with some presently accepted concepts of Einstein's unifield field theory. The discoverers of this unique system, Muriel and Louis Hasbrook, had devoted over 30 years to its development. They launched their trial balloon in American Mercury magazine in 1959. Then, after adding new refinements, space-time forecasting formally started its annual and bi-monthly predictions in 1965 and has been right on the money ever since. This scientific application of astrology has attracted the smartest, most successful stock market investors, brokers, advisors, and analysts, many of whom quietly incorporate space-time forecasting in their own mailing to their clients. That's how accurate astrology is. That was from the 1960s. That's why I wanted to share this with you, because I really wanted people to understand, oh, yeah, it's real. When you know what's there, when you do the research and you actually understand what's before you, it is beyond accurate. I keep telling you, it's a science. And a science means it's irrefutable, right? They have not been able to disprove it. They can't. Too many things occur right on the money. And it's one of those things. Now, we might look at, well, why does this happen, right? How is this? First of all, as a spiritual being, it's important for us to know that we're all operating under one big sky. We're all one. I think because we get into our individual selves, we forget that we're all one. We're all one. We're all part of one unit. These planets are set in stone. When they disappear, when they stop operating, we will stop operating. That's how irrefutable it is. So there's one of my favorite books, and in fact, just a little pitch here, that I actually on my website at astrology.com have this particular thing, but I won't give the website. I just did, didn't I? I'll just tell you, Heaven Knows What. That's the book I'm reading from, and that's what this that I have. But this is from Grant Louis. He died in 1951. This man was a genius. What he put together is immutable. I feel proud to share his works in 2021, on my website. But beyond that, I want to share what he says here because it's amazing. So the question, Heaven Knows What, asks what it is that the sky patterns can tell us. Like, Heaven knows what? What does it know? The answer, Heaven Knows What, provides gives positive directions meaningful to each individual soul. The ancients knew the parts of the universe to be somehow tied together into a whole, and they found a formula for establishing humanity's relationship with that whole. We're all one. We're all part of that whole. That's why it continues to work, you guys. So, as above, so below. Since everything is related to everything else in some manner, we know that it is these very relationships that give us understanding of the whole. In other words, it's not the singular existence of a straight line here or a curved line there and a blotch of color over there, each seen as isolated facts that tell us anything about the pattern of which they are parts. It's rather the relationship of these parts of each other that make the whole that we see as a picture. It is the way in which these parts relate to each other within the whole that is the subject of the horoscope picture, of the sky pattern seen from a particular place of a particular time, representing a particular person or event. Note that the emphasis remains on the whole, the pattern, not the event. Note that the horoscope as a picture of relationships isn't concerned with the mechanics of how this as above, so below actually works. It is enough to say that the pattern of energies within a person was set at the time of birth. And that pattern is somehow related to the pattern of energies as represented by bodies in space in the sky at that moment. Of course, we all know there are causal relationships between heavenly bodies and the events on Earth, like we hear about the moon, the ebb and flow and how it affects the tides and how people react during a full moon or a new moon. We know those little things. And we know the position of the sun in relationship to the earth, and that it brings seasons like, fall and spring and summer and winter, and that the cycles of the moon and sun in relation to each other and those of earth cause the ebb and flow of the oceans, tides, and changing weather. We've learned to understand our own behavior responses to weather extremes and the irritability that comes with hot and humid days, the paranoia that builds up with the long, hot, dry spells, etc. For example, we hunger for more foods rich in fat and protein in the winter because the body needs more of these substances for warmth and sustenance in the absence of the sun. The ancients came up with another paradigm, establishing humanity's relationship to the universe. Human as microcosm. Each person is a miniature of a macrocosm. All of the forces that make up the universe, the cosmos, are also functioning within all of us. This is why we have to look at the birth horoscope as a whole and not as a collection of isolated parts. As above, so below, macrocosm and microcosm, two formulae giving a mind-blowing answer to the question, heaven knows what? Heaven knows what? So I wanted to share that because I thought, oh my gosh, how amazing. We're all part of the whole. We all want to think, oh, we're so individual. That sun isn't going to affect my life. That moon isn't going to affect my life. Mercury retrograde isn't going to affect my business. Because we want to feel like we're independent. Our life is our own. And to a certain part, we're all each our own individual selves, but we are all part of a whole. And there is an immutable move there, it's set in stone. So it happens regardless of what we are or think as an individual. I'll just say this. Okay, I had found something else and it was interesting. It says, we have forgotten that our original encounter with the heavens was immediate, direct, and alive. Are we not hungering for a deeper knowledge of ourselves and others? Isn't that precisely what astrology purports to offer? Doesn't it put us more in touch with our true nature? All too often, it seems we have simply gone along with our culture, just thinking about astrology. What if we begin to feel it as well? And I believe that astrology is something that can be felt in real, it's real. I'll give you an example really quick. I have personally Saturn in the first house by birth. And I'm currently going through what is known as a Saturn return, which means that Saturn is near the place, if not on the place, where it was at my birth, which is, mine was 10 degrees Aquarius, and it's now at 13 degrees Aquarius, but it's going to retrograde back over 10 degrees. It's a nightmare, believe me. So what does Saturn in Aquarius mean? Well, all of the things that Saturn and Aquarius represent have really come to the forefront in my life during this return. First of all, I'm sitting here having this conversation about astrology with you. And astrology is represented by Aquarius. Saturn represents my work. And my work is as an astrologer. It's acting out in reality, in real time. Also, Saturn in Aquarius rolls the knees, as does Saturn in Capricorn. But if it's in your first house and it's in Aquarius, it's your knees, your legs. And my legs have been affected. Back in 2007, I had 2 knees dislocated at the same time. And I was told I would never walk again. So I wanted to let you know whether we want to believe that, Saturn, or not Saturn, but astrology in general, will play a role in our life. Sometimes when we look back on things, we've lived it out regardless of our belief in it or not. It is there. It does occur. So I just wanted to mention this here. It says, with metaphor, music, myth, spiritual practice, and dramatic and artistic expression, we can move into more direct contact with the planetary energies. And in so doing, we rediscover the depths of ourselves. Astrology becomes then not just a tool for abstraction and intellectualization, but a way of self-knowledge and a means to vital, primal communion, with that which is transcendent. So I wanted to share that with you guys. And by the way, I got that out of one of my other ancient books, Astrology Alive by Barbara Shermer. So you guys, I could go on and on. I mean, yeah, there's the stock market, there's predictions. I mean, on the daily, people use astrology and all different types of modalities now. Like in tarot has really become kind of like a sub-astrology, right? You really have to know a little bit about astrology when you're doing tarot now, because it mixes in with different things like Saturn. Like I was talking about the world in one of my readings. Now, maybe it's just me, but when I talk about the world, I always mention that it's an Earth card. It's a Saturn card. It's basically a Capricorn card, you know. And so I talk about these things when I do my tarot. And I'm thinking that's how much astrology it's in everything that we do. Those who are wise will be wise enough to learn it and implement it in their lives, because astrology is real. This has been Adrienne Obey, Capricorntigress of Astrology Look Inside, and also a co-author of the upcoming book, The Soul Legacy Journal, Spiritual Awakening Stories of 365, and a soul-guided instructor at the Spiritual Business Women Network. Much love, much light, many blessings to all.